Hi, I'm Eric Cottrell of Lynn, Massachusetts. I get my weekly radio news on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in beautiful Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, March the 2nd. My name's Sheldon, here with Jill. We are here every Sunday morning. 30 minutes of news and information for you from the world of radio. We do want to remind you that next Sunday is the time change to daylight time from standard time. That is going to mean a change in our UTC time. We will still be on the air Eastern time at 10:30 a.m., but in UTC time, that will be 14:30 hours UTC rather than 15 hours 30 UTC. So 10:30 Eastern, 14:30 UTC beginning next Sunday. We'll remind you of that again at the end of the show, just in case. We, as I said, are here with our weekly program. We have stories today from some interesting stories from the BBC coming up a little bit later, and some interesting stories from some things going on here in Canada. So we will get started with a quick update on the upcoming 38th annual NASWA SWL Festival. We've been talking about it for quite a few weeks now. It's coming up on April the 25th and the 26th. All of the information on the event can be found on the website, swlfest.com. We wanted to tell you one change that we were informed about this week. It is the registration fee if you are going to attend via Zoom. Originally, it was to be $20 for the weekend. That has now been dropped to $15. If you had already registered at $20, you will maybe have already or will be receiving a $5 refund on your registration fee. So you can get all the information at the website. If you are planning on attending in person, there is a limit to the number of people who can attend in person. All of that information, including hotel reservation information, is also on the website. If you have any questions about the event, you can contact the organizers at SWL FEST, that's SWLFEST at NASWA, NASWA.net. We'll keep you up to date on any future information coming along to us, particularly people waiting to see the schedule of events and forums taking place on April the 25th and April 26th. Next, we have an obituary to pass along, and this is a lot of people here in the province of Quebec and around the city of Montreal will recognize the name. It is Michel Mathieu, ham operator, Victor Echo 2, Mike. Radio in the city of Montreal is mourning one of its many presenters, Michel Mathieu, VE2 Mike, who passed away on February the 19th. He was also well known in the field of broadcasting right across Canada. He was at certain times the owner of a couple of radio stations in our region, CHRS, which was in Longueuil at one time, then moved to Saint-Jean, and also was involved with CGMS on 1040 kilohertz, also out in Saint-Constant. Those are just outside the city of Montreal. He served as a broadcasting consultant and a technician, actually, for many radio stations. He worked in the field of AM transmitters in particular. There weren't many people around who know how to handle those machines, but that's where he spent a lot of his time working. We pass along our condolences to his spouse, his family, and many friends in the radio industry. And there are details coming of a memorial service for Michel Mathieu. So we pass that story along to you this week.
Our condolences to the family and friends. In our next news, something happened yesterday, and it has to do with Chorus Radio that actually decided that the radio stations would only play Canadian artists yesterday, Saturday, March 1st, amid tariff tensions. So radio stations across several parts of the country have set their tune to Canada on a Saturday as tensions mount with the U.S. over tariffs. Chorus Entertainment says nearly 24 of its rock and pop stations have shown their solidarity and support of the country on Saturday by exclusively spinning playlists of popular Canadian artists. The company highlighted Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, Celine Dion, The Tragically Hip, and The Beaches as some of the acts they intend to feature. The single-day program rolled out about 24 Chorus FM stations, including Edmonton's Chuck 92.5, Ottawa's Jump 106.9, and Winnipeg's Power 97. Canadian talent has also played on Toronto and Calgary's alternate rock Edge stations and Vancouver's CFOX, as well as numerous fresh radio stations across Ontario. So the programming came ahead of expectations for the U.S. President Donald Trump that will slap 25% tariffs on most Canadian goods on Tuesday. Commercial radio stations are already required to play at least 35% of qualifying Canadian music each week, as per the rules by the broadcast regulator. So that happened and was in solidarity. So I don't know if other media, Bell and whatever, could at some point also initiate their own Canadian day of programming. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. Why not?
We may see more of it, I would think. We just found out today, actually, that the date for the tariffs has been pushed another month. It's going to take place now only at the beginning of April rather than the beginning of March. So who knows what might happen in the next month. We may see some of the media responding to that as they did yesterday on Saturday. We have a little bit of other Canadian radio news for you. This comes from Connie Thiessen at Broadcast Dialogue. The CRTC approves My Broadcasting Corporation's purchase of Bell Media radio stations. The CRTC has approved My Broadcasting Corporation's application to acquire 4 commercial radio stations from Bell Media. The acquisitions include CFJR-FM and CJPT-FM in Brockville, Ontario, and CFLY and CKLC in Kingston, Ontario. CJFR and CFLY, both FM stations, currently carry Bell Media's Move Radio adult contemporary format, while CKLC-FM is branded as Pure Country, and CJPT-FM airs the Bounce Radio adult hits format. The company has agreed to a condition of service that will restrict CFLY FM soliciting advertising in Brockville and CJPT FM selling in Kingston, Ontario. The company stated in its application that it will be hiring more journalists, sales representatives, and local managers for both Brockville and Kingston, and that the transaction would not result in a decrease in staff. In a company announcement, My Broadcasting Corporation called the acquisition strategic as part of its ongoing expansion and commitment to deliver quality, local-first broadcasting across Ontario. We are thrilled to welcome these stations and amazing broadcasters into the MBC family, said MBC President John Pohl. Our focus has always been on engaging and providing relevant local content, and we look forward to continuing this tradition with our new listeners in Brockville and Kingston. MBC said that listeners can expect a seamless transition as it integrates the stations into its network. The company is dedicated to maintaining their unique identity while introducing fresh local programming and community initiatives, MBC stated in their announcement. So this is really good news that some stations will continue to serve local communities with local information. We've been seeing way too much network programming going across the country and syndicated programming. So it's good to see that this company at least is going to maintain some local programming and local information for their cities.
Oh, yeah, that is absolutely something that we need because there's way too much. Over the years, the broadcast scene on radio has become more and more of, well, you're listening to something, but it's not catered for you, specifically for your area. And it becomes something that is uninteresting at some point. So it's nice to see that a company that purchased these stations kind of wants to reverse the idea and say, no, we're committed to the local audience. So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun was quite active this week. There was actually even a G1 class geomagnetic storm that happened. So conditions were a little rough. They were rough also because there was a radiation storm at the poles that prevented a lot of stations from actually reaching us. So most of the week, Radio Thailand, for example, on 13750 at 0 UTC was just not there, as the signal actually crosses the North Pole to reach us. In the week ahead, well, we have a few sunspots that are capable of M-class solar flares at 3998, 4000, and 4006. Something big might be actually coming our way in the next week, because during the week there was a huge flare on the far side of the sun. And that is something that we're waiting for maybe in the next week to arrive. So we'll see what happens next. But for the rest, it's rather quiet for now, and hopefully this week it will stay.
We often talk about auroral conditions at different times of the year, and Space Weather has an interesting article where it states that March is the best month of the year for auroras, or, pretty much anything March, April, September, October. These are the moments. So did you know that March is the best month of the year for auroras? It's true. A 75-year study by retired NASA solar physicist David Hathaway shows that March has more geomagnetically active days than any other month of the year. And this is interesting because they did an average number of geomagnetically disturbed days from 1932 to 2007. According to the historical records, geomagnetic disturbances are almost twice as likely in spring and fall versus winter and summer. And this is due to the Russell-McFerrin effect. In short, cracks in the Earth's magnetosphere tend to form and allows the solar wind to spark northern lights. So it's been known for a while that every time we get to the equinox in March, April, and September, October, we are much more at risk that even a slight solar wind, a small flare, could actually jump spark a geomagnetic storm. It's something interesting, and it seems that 75 years of data has shown that, yep, that is true.
Sunspot number 129, the solar flux 170. And, if you want to witness the changes in propagation, or if it's just really good, got to turn on a radio and listen.
This is Amanda Dawn Christie telling you that if you're interested in radio, AM, FM, shortwave, amateur radio, pirate broadcasting, and more, you won't want to miss the International Radio Report every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal and online at ckut.ca.
So the BBC News announces new international model to focus on growth. And this is via the BBC Media Centre. BBC News has announced a new way of working internationally to enhance opportunities for audience growth around the world and to simplify the organization's structure. Later this year, 6 regional directors will be appointed to lead 6 regions across the world, both editorially and operationally. Grouping the world into 6 distinct areas, the regional directors will be tasked with growing audiences in their region and providing clear reporting lines on each of the BBC World Service's 42 language services. These changes will strengthen BBC News' ability to serve audiences with independent and impartial news, to counter disinformation, and to deliver our editorial priorities with accountability and clarity at the center of the plan. Outside the UK, the 6 regional directors will make the most of regional expertise and have a regional headquarters. The regions are Africa, the Americas, Asia Pacific, Central and South Asia, Europe, and the Middle East and North Africa. Enhancing regional leadership will mean more devolved responsibilities from London and the oversight of regional spending, governance, and culture. To fund these positions, leadership roles in London will close. BBC News remains the most trusted news provider in an increasingly polarized world and where our services are being outspent by billions in the form of state-backed media. The new model of working will ensure the BBC's global operation is fit to face its future challenges. Jonathan Munro, Global Director and Deputy CEO of BBC News, says, BBC News international output and the BBC World Service have never been more needed as the fight against disinformation intensifies and press freedom is increasingly under threat globally. The BBC's trusted journalism has to go further to reach more of those who need it most and to provide an alternative for those who want impartial coverage. These plans put audiences first, supercharging our ability for growth to reach more people with independent news and to put the BBC's global operations in the best position to succeed in our mission. The BBC's global news output and the BBC World Service deliver outstanding programs and services to audiences in the UK and around the world across 42 different languages service. Primarily through the BBC World Service, we reach 450 million people on average every week. I think the idea is not bad to divide the world into 6 regions and have each region being its own thing that will, help grow an audience. Of course, you'll know much more personally that audience in those regions also, and have 6 different, kind of directors that will need to just show us that they can improve the audience relations in those regions. So there's a focus, and I think the BBC is working hard in trying to make everything better. So hopefully it is going to help for the future of the BBC World Service and maintaining what we absolutely need, good journalism.
Yeah, not all of these services, of course, are on shortwave. BBC is one of the broadcasting organizations that's employed FM transmitters in various sections of the world, different countries in the world, and people can tune in to a local radio station that's carrying BBC programming. That is, if that country wants them to.
Yeah.
We've had stories from many countries where the ruling government doesn't like what the BBC is saying and wants to stop that from reaching their population. And they have an easy way of doing it if it's on an FM station locally. If it's on a shortwave station, broadcasting from afar into the countries, well, obviously that can still reach the listeners. Very hard to stop that from happening. So I hope that they'll continue to at least put some of their output on shortwave so that they do reach places where it's difficult to get local programming on the air. In sort of a connected story, though, this one is a little bit disturbing, a little bit surprising, I'm sure, to a lot of people. It's from the Daily Telegraph, supplied by Mike Cooper through Glenn Hauser's World of Radio IO Group. The headline, BBC pays Taliban to broadcast in Afghanistan. The BBC is paying money to the Taliban's propaganda wing to ensure that it can broadcast in Afghanistan. Since militants seized Kabul in August 2021, the Islamic fundamentalist regime has censored multiple media companies and forced radio stations off the air. But the corporation remains able to broadcast from the country, in part because of payments to the Radio and Television of Afghanistan, or the RTA. The Telegraph understands money from the BBC covers rent to small parts of the RTA sites, which enables the BBC to house its FM equipment. Security for those sites is also covered by the rent. Elliot Keck, head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance, said, Taxpayers will feel sick to the stomach by what the BBC is doing in Afghanistan. The BBC is funding what is effectively the propaganda wing of the Taliban. If the price of remaining in Afghanistan involves bending over backwards to Taliban demands, then the BBC should consider pulling out. The Taliban is continuing to restrict the freedoms of women, minority groups, and others. Last week, a British couple in their 70s were arrested by the Taliban. Peter Reynolds, 79, and his wife Barbie, 75, had been running training projects in schools in the country for the past 18 years. A BBC spokesman said the BBC is editorially independent throughout its programming, irrespective of the language service, and remains the only international news media organization still broadcasting inside Afghanistan. We make rental payments to RTA to enable distribution via the BBC FM network of independent and impartial news to audiences throughout the country. The BBC has robust compliance procedures in place to ensure it complies with UK sanctions. The UK does not maintain comprehensive sanctions against the Taliban, but has instead designated individuals and entities within Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the BBC's charitable wing, BBC Media Action, which operates independently to the broadcaster, is reportedly contributing to the regime by paying income tax on staff salaries and operating costs such as vehicle registrations and licensing. The Telegraph understands such costs are required by any organization operating in Afghanistan. There is no suggestion that the BBC or BBC Media Action are breaking sanctions. Somewhat disturbing, though, that British taxpayers' money is going into the pockets of the Taliban.
You know, this is where we talk about how shortwave is important, and you can broadcast to that country without having to do this. Especially the Taliban, I don't think is the most trustworthy people in the world with our money. So you're giving money to broadcast. There are tons of rules also that mean there are tons of things you can't say or can't do. The restrictions are so heavy. Why are you actually doing this? Who had the idea? I don't know. I'd prefer, just use shortwave. And that at least is not censored. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, I don't think anybody realized that this was going on. Maybe just the insiders who were actually doing it were aware of it. But now it's been made public. I'm sure there's going to be some kickback on this when people find out about it. As you said, shortwave transmissions can travel thousands of miles and reach places far off without having to worry about the restrictions that are going to be put on by a government like the Taliban. We've seen and read stories to you on the show here about stations within Afghanistan that have been shut down simply because they don't meet the requirements and the rules and regulations of the broadcasting authority there. So who's to say that, the BBC is going to continue to do this? If the Taliban starts hearing things that they don't like, it's going to be very easy for them to shut this down. The FM equipment is located right there within their borders in Kabul. So it's precarious. It's something that could disappear very, very quickly. And who knows how much money they get in advance to allow the BBC to do this. If they suddenly throw them out of there, I don't think they're going to be issuing them a refund.
No refund possible. I'm pretty sure of that. And it's so delicate. One little news item that they don't like, and hey, you're out.
Exactly.
It's crazy. So there's some upcoming ham radio contests.
It's going to be a busy weekend next weekend for ham radio. We'll start off with the Radio Society of Great Britain. They have organizing the Commonwealth Contest. It's running from 1000 Zulu March 8th to 1000 Zulu March 9th. And the bands are 80 through 10 meters. This is a CW only event, though.
There's the South America 10-meter contest, 1200 Zulu March 8th to 1200 Zulu March the 9th, organized by the South American 10 meters contest committee. Modes are CW and SSB, and it's 10 meters only.
The Digital Diploma Interest Group of Germany is having the Digital QSO Party, SSB. 1200 Zulu March 8th to 1100 Zulu March 9th. And it is not actually a digital contest, though, even though it is a digital group that's organizing it. The mode is SSB, and it'll be on 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters.
There's the Union de Radio Aficionados Españoles, the URE, that is having the EAPSK 63 contest. 1200 Zulu March 8th to 1200 Zulu March 9th. Bands are 10, 15, 20, 40, and 80 meters, and the mode is BPSK 63.
The German Telegraphy Activity Group has the AGCW QRP contest, 1400 to 2000 Zulu March the 8th, 80 through 10 meters, and it is CW but low power QRP only.
There's the Oklahoma QSO Party, 1500 Zulu March 8th to 2100 Zulu March 9th, organized by Connie, K5CM. Bands are 80 through 6 meters, modes CW, SSB, PSK, and RTTY, and there is no FT8 in this one.
The Pocatello Amateur Radio Club is holding the Idaho QSO Party, 1900 Zulu March 8th to 1900 Zulu March 9th, 160 through 10 meter bands, and all of the modes CW, SSB, and digital, but also no FT8 for that event.
And finally, there's the North American Sprint, RTTY, from 000 Zulu to 0359 Zulu, March the 9th, organized by the National Contest Journal. Bands are 80, 40, and 20 meters, and the mode is radio teletype, RTTY.
We often talk about the amateur radio contests, and there's some digital contests in there. And one of the things that's interesting is that if you want to brush up on your digital mode decoding, I think amateur contests are great for that. So one of the software I think you could use is FLDG. We'll put the link to the download of this software in the description and the links of the show. And you should actually try. I mean, don't forget that these amateur radio contests that we talk about are not just for amateurs. They are also for the listeners. And sometimes it's kind of fun to try them out, hear different countries, different stations you never heard before, and decode different digital modes maybe you never tried, which is a lot of fun also. And it can be done with a computer, or a smartphone, a tablet. So check it out.
And with this, we're pretty much out of time.
Yes, we are. We do want to remind you one more time that with the time change coming up to daylight time next weekend, our show will still be at 10:30 Eastern next Sunday, but the UTC time will change. It will be 14:30 UTC rather than 15:30 UTC. So adjust yourself accordingly. If you want to reach us, we have an email address for you, radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streamed and archived by CKUT at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report, we welcome Peter St. Martin as a new member this week. And finally, our YouTube channel. We invite you to go there if you have any problems hearing the show on CKUT or on the archives of the station. Check out our YouTube channel. Each show is posted up there, as well as previous shows that you can go back and listen to. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@IRR. That is it. Don't forget to change your clocks, and we'll talk to you again next Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, 14:30 UTC, here on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You're tuned to Swiss Radio International in Bern.